Welcome back to another edition of the Fantasy Authority podcast. We are back again. We said that the last time we spoke that we were going to take a break after our 2019 fantasy review show we did about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, before the Kansas City Chiefs became Super Bowl champions. And but we're back again, and we have a very special guest on today. I actually used to. Kind of came up with TFA and then now has spread his wings to much bigger and better things. We have Travis May on today from RotoViz and also does a Dynasty Command podcast. How you doing today, Travis?
Doing great. Great to be back. I feel like there was a game this week or something. I'm actually surprised you're coherent and good to go after that. I mean, you've been waiting your entire life for that game to happen. So congratulations again, because that's got to be incredible. I've been waiting my entire life almost for the Titans to do something, and they almost did and could have, except for your Chiefs. But whatever, I'm totally not bitter about it. But
well, I mean, that's what the Chiefs do. The Chiefs aren't actually start playing until they're down by at least 10 points. So
yeah,
and then the
trick is to never get up by 10 points, and you'll probably win.
There you go. See, if they would have kept it a little closer, maybe never would have. They would be playing. They would have played in the Super Bowl. So it was amazing. It was a lot of fun. I've been talking to people I work with about how it's unfair that like my son, who is 8, gets to witness this so soon. Where I have had to go through the horrible ups and downs of being a Chiefs fan and getting kicked out of the playoffs multiple times by the craziest stuff, even by your Titans, Marcus Mariota catching his own deflection.
Which you got to admit, that was hilarious. I'm sure you weren't laughing in that moment, but oh my gosh.
No, I was not at all. So when we had to play the Titans again, I think all of the Chiefs fans here in Kansas City were nervous because, the Titans seems to have had our number the last couple of years, even this year when you guys came back and beat us in Tennessee.
In your house. Yeah.
So I don't know. It was fun. It's awesome. The parade is tomorrow. I'm not going. It's supposed to be like 30 and snow tomorrow. So
okay.
Yeah, but everyone else says, and they're expecting like 1.6 million people there. So
that's a few.
Yeah. Anyways, I guess we should also introduce my co-host, good old #HedgeLife Cody Kutzer. How you doing tonight, Cody?
Doing well, man. The break was nice. It was nice to take that little hiatus, and now it's on to the Dynasty season, and the Combine is just a couple weeks away. It's wild.
Yeah. This is like a Pornhub season for all you Dynasty people out here.
Whoa. That's a good turn there.
Excited now, and the pod, with this is your guys' time to shine, and the redraft DFS guys sit down, and it's time for the Dynasty people to stand up and have their moment, right?
Yeah, this is the beginning of our season. This is the busiest time ever in terms of writing and podcasting and everything that I do throughout the year. During the year, I'm doing like 2 weekly pieces in a podcast. Okay, that's fine. But during the off season, there are windows of time where I'm like basically writing the equivalent of probably 5 articles to hit deadlines for different magazine releases and things like that, and then also doing 3 or 4 guest spots and whatever. It's just this time is my favorite time, but man, it is most certainly busy.
This is your grind. This is your grind season now.
That's for sure.
And it's awesome really because we get to do all this work, and then the Combine's going to come along, and for some reason, people are going to lose their minds and just completely flip all their rankings around. Happens every year for no reason.
Yeah, especially when it comes to like wide receiver. Like if you look at how sticky any individual test is in terms of, being able to mean anything and their hit rate, it's pretty gross. But still, people like the 40-inch verticals and the whatever agility tests happen, and especially the 40-yard dash. People tend to like that. Okay, but we've got a couple more weeks before people freak out.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing. Most years we do we actually do it after post Combine usually, and we usually have Travis, you've been on this one every time we do it. So I think the last time you were on, we did tight ends, and you were teaching us all about all these tight ends that we've never heard of, and it was a lot of fun.
We could do that too. I mean, there's like 11 guys I'd be excited to talk about if we want to do that after running backs, but maybe another time.
Yeah, you love the tight end. That was Dallas Goedert year. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, but anyways, tonight we're going to be talking about the rookie running backs to start. Kind of the one that everybody loves the most, the position of where people take high in their rookie drafts, and now and even redraft has bled over to where we're starting to see these guys go higher and higher and higher and higher every single year. And yeah, I don't think this year is going to be any different. So I know before everybody started really declaring for the draft, there was a lot of guys that people were really super excited about. Some of them decided to return back to school. But with this class, there's kind of that top 5, I feel like, and then there's kind of the little bit of a drop off, and then there's the next group. I've seen a lot of different people and their rankings and where they're kind of putting players, and there's a lot of guys that seem to be different on a lot of different players. But it seems to me, at least the majority all have either Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift, 1, 2, or whichever way you want to look at it, or maybe a couple of the other guys there. But for you guys, who is your RB1 right now?
For me, there's definitely a tier of 3 that kind of feel like they're in their own little zone right now, and I could go any way. I feel like with the top 3. For me, there's DeAndre Swift and Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins, all check boxes in different ways. But right now, I think DeAndre Swift is it. Whether the production metrics point towards him being the number 1 overall running back or not, that's where I'm planting my flag pre-combine. But I am excited to see what Jonathan Taylor and J.K. Dobbins do at the combine, because I think that they're going to impress in just about every way.
Yeah, it's Swift for me at 1 as well for right now. And outside of him having a mediocre to awful landing spot and somebody else having a great landing spot, I don't foresee that changing too much. But these top 3, 4, 5 guys, it's really fluid. And then you have somebody like Cam Akers, who probably going to do pretty well at the combine as well. And then the 1-year wonder coming out with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that seems to be the top 5. And I think, were those the only 5 that were taken in your Twitter poll mock, Travis? Or did anybody else slide in there at the end?
Yeah, no, actually. So, and just for the people that aren't aware of the nerdy thing that I do every year on Twitter, I basically run polls based off of, I try to pull in data I scrape most of the internet to find what real NFL draft people are saying about where these players will be taken, to assess, the draft capital projected for these players. And then I basically use a collective rankings pool from, I try to get about 20 different experts that I kind of have access to. And then I kind of pull in players 4 at a time, to be pulled on Twitter, and then try to get some results to kind of gauge some kind of consensus every single year. I try to do that in January, and then again, even after the combine sometimes, then after the draft. But Zach Moss did come in there and make it in.
That's right.
And then Eno Benjamin and Keyshawn Vaughn actually snuck in as well as the last pick. So we actually had 6, let's see here, 5, 6, 7, 8 running backs all in all that made it inside of the top 2 rounds of standard rookie drafts, top 24 picks.
So, I mean, going through some of these guys, with Jonathan Taylor, I think a lot of people have kind of made a big deal about his workload that he received, especially in just 3 years of college. But what he ended up with 926 total carries in his 3 seasons, put up monster production. But there seems to be some people out there that are concerned with that and his workload, and is he going to wear down much quicker than a lot of these other guys? Something we saw from like a David Johnson, who also as somebody who received a ton of touches while he was in college in Northern Iowa. Is that anything that you're taking into consideration whenever you're going to be going into your rookie drafts?
I'm not super concerned with the carry total with Jonathan Taylor. I think, yeah, eventually everyone has a finite number of carries, but he's still a young back, and most of the running backs, we're not really expecting their shelf life to kind of stay and give us this prime window of production more than 4 or 5 years as is. And you look at players like Derrick Henry and a few other exceptions like him who had crazy carry totals, especially in their final seasons. I mean, Henry had like 400 carries when he was still at Alabama in just his last season. And before that, I mean, every year in high school, he had over 300 carries. So he had like 1,200 carries before he even got to college because he just ran into the ground. And so, there was an argument even back then about Derrick Henry having a bunch of tread ran off his tires. But I don't think there's much to worry about when we're talking about a position with such a short shelf life as the running back position is, and that's just how the NFL is. And if he gets injured, he gets injured, but I'm not going to point to his carry total if that happens.
Yeah, I think something that gets blown out of proportion in dynasty leagues to begin with is like you draft guys, and for some reason people are like, oh man, Jonathan Taylor, 8 years, man, got him as a rookie. Like if you're looking at holding a player for that long, like you're either in a super inactive league or you're playing with nobody else. Because like there's leagues that I've had from, at the end of year one where I have 4 or 5 guys that I've, that I initially drafted. So I think it's something that gets blown out of proportion. And like Travis said, if you're basically only looking to get production out of their first contract anyway, like that's something like even like the NFL seems to be going toward, where I think a lot of these bigger contracts are they're gonna pull back. Your Todd Gurley's, he gets paid all that money and then a year later turns to dust. So I would not be worried either. And people that are looking at that as far as, worrying when the wheels are going to fall off. Maybe if you're completely rebuilding, you shy away from somebody like that and you look more toward a wide receiver anyway. But if you're anywhere near competing, that's not something I'd be too worried about.
Yeah, I mean, we always have to pick and be super picky anyway with everything these guys.
Yeah, and that's a question that comes in from like, we're just trying to find something that differentiates these guys, but realistically, I'm not super worried about it.
So with this year's class, maybe it's just, being on fantasy Twitter and seeing, a lot of people talking about these guys for most of the season, but it feels like that this class is a little bit more hype than what last year's was. Do you guys think this class could even could be as good as we saw a couple years ago with the Christian McCaffrey class?
Whew, man, I think the very top of it could be close, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be that level of elite. I'm not expecting really any of these guys to just reach Christian McCaffrey levels. I think anytime you expect somebody to kind of come in and be the best back in the league, like the Saquon Barkleys, there's no Saquon Barkley, and there's nobody that I would say is like the Christian McCaffrey that does everything to the level of extreme that he does. But I think it's a bunch of guys that could be back in running back ones, top 24 backs for their entire rookie contracts, that kind of level of player. I think there would have been more hype about that and potential in having maybe 1 or 2 extra backs doing that, had a few names not gone back to school right before the deadline, because this class, the depth definitely suffered after a few guys chose to go back. I mean, there's still going to be probably 18 to 20 backs drafted, but it could have been the very top. There could have been really solid 8, 9, 10 backs. But we're going to have to wait one more year on just a few guys.
Travis, if one of these top like 2, 3 running backs lands in the 2 spots everyone keeps talking about, is like Kansas City and Tampa Bay, do you see any of these rookie running backs like making their way into like the first round of startup drafts at all, like a Barkley or like a Zeke whenever they came out?
Yeah, I think just because I'm not sure that the absolute consensus on the talent on any of these guys is so clear and above, like Saquon was and like Zeke was after the hype of the playoff run and all that. I don't think it's quite there, but Kansas City is obviously, we love that because of the touchdown upside and what we've seen, undrafted guys do and lower level guys do in that role in terms of draft capital, coming in and just exploding. Obviously, Kansas City right now is going to be the hot spot. So I think that they could be like a second round startup pick for sure. I think, in fact, there's probably a chance that all three of the backs, depending on landing spot, could end up as second round startup picks. But I'm not sure any of them would creep into the first round for me, even on Kansas City.
I think it's funny with the Kansas City. I honestly think if they draft a running back, I think it's going to be super late. Like, I don't think that they're going to team. Like, they still have Damian Williams, who's under another year, and it's a very cheap contract. And so it's not like they're paying him anything or they're going to have to get out from under that deal. They still have Darwin Thompson. I think if they draft anybody, it's going to be late. It's going to be 5th, 6th, 7th round type thing, or maybe an undrafted guy they bring in. I just do not see them going out and spending an earlier pick on a running back. I know there's people that about like the Chiefs trading up and getting like DeAndre Swift or something. Like, it's not like that's not.
I agree. I agree. I don't think it's going to happen. But if they did grab somebody in day 2 and got one of those 3 inside the top 50 picks or whatever, that would be a crazy good looking spot for sure. But yeah, I definitely think that there's probably 4 or 5 other teams that still have great opportunity painted on them right now, and probably would select a back potentially earlier than Kansas City will. I'm not really sure there's as much of a lock as there were last year with the Raiders going Josh Jacobs. Like, I feel like everyone made that pick, I don't know, 3 months before the draft. And I don't think that there's like that obvious kind of fit and obvious need and obvious tendency to draft that back early like there is usually. But there's some other teams I think more likely than Kansas City. I think Miami, they probably have a need to fill there. Obviously, I don't really trust any of the backs that they have there, and they obviously shipped off Kenyon Drake. So they're probably not going to, I think, even though he's unrestricted free agent, I don't think they're going to bring Kenyon Drake right back. So I definitely think that would be a lot of fun. And if you pair that with their new rookie quarterback, and let's just say Tua Tagovailoa, that could be interesting. Pretty early on, I think there would be some hype surrounding a back in that situation, or even Houston or Atlanta, some other guys too, other places.
I actually think Atlanta one is pretty interesting. I think they are a team that could definitely take a running back here. Devonta Freeman's getting older. I think they try to get out from under that contract.
Oh yeah,
and maybe I don't know. Maybe they're the team at 16 that takes DeAndre Swift and keeps him in house, keeps him in state, if you will. To go with that offense, because that offense is not getting any younger, and their window is certainly closing. Though I guess you could make an argument that they probably definitely need defense more than they do, a running back. But I do think it's an interesting spot.
Yeah. Yeah, they have the 2 first-round picks on the offensive line from last year, and that offensive line just had a bunch of injuries. So that is one of the a low-key spot that I really like as well.
Yeah, and I think the Texans, I mean, if you've got Deshaun Watson and about 4 good wide receivers to kind of empty out the box, and they're running out of 11 personnel, could be looking at a situation that's way more highly efficient than it has been in previous years. Looking at like Carlos Hyde, and even Duke Johnson or whatever else you want to throw in there. That I think any of the backs that go to Houston in the first 3 rounds would immediately be given the reins to start there. And obviously, even like with the 49ers, there's talk of, what if they bring somebody else in, because McKinnon's dead. Coleman's not really been a thing. Mostert, I mean, he's been a great story, but do they just give him the reins and say, hey, do it again? I know that you didn't do it ever before this year, but catch lightning in a bottle twice.
Yeah. The Texans broke my heart when Damari Crockett. Like, I was just praying that they would give him the opportunity. I was like, come on, do it, Houston. And then they cut him, and I was like, pouring out for the homie. Like,
yeah.
Because there was a lot of positive reports coming out about him through training camp and then through the preseason and everything else. So it sounded like he was going to make the team, and then nope.
Yeah, so. Just disappointing. I mean, I was a fan even for like Devy purposes for a while because he burst onto the scene as a true freshman with over 1,000 yards right away. He didn't really have many catches that year, but I mean, he burst onto the scene. It looked like he was going to be the real deal. Obviously, he struggled with some injury. I mean, you're familiar with his story. But yeah, that would have been fun to see him hit. And then a couple spots, though, I was interested in just to see what happens. Like Royce Freeman and Philip Lindsay aren't exactly wowing for the Broncos. They're super cheap, really, I guess, as far as running back contracts go. But I feel like they could easily upgrade with probably 5 backs in this class, maybe 6, over what they're doing. And then Tennessee, my Titans, like if they don't sign Henry, because he's probably going to be asking for some money. To clarify, he's not. There's a bunch of blurbs out there saying, Zeke's contract is the floor for Derrick Henry. That's kind of not. That's not really the whole story. But he's gonna be expensive to bring back, and obviously the fans would probably riot if they didn't bring Derrick Henry back. But they're probably gonna draft somebody to pair with him too, because Deion Lewis is just not getting it done, and hasn't ever since he's gotten here. So that would be an interesting spot if Henry departs, and even if he doesn't, if they bring in some kind of pass catching back to have more of a role, that would probably be an interesting spot. If nothing else, to be in kind of a perfect handcuff situation for like a ridiculous feature workload, if the time came that Henry missed any games.
Yeah, and I think something else that we're going to have to monitor here is going to be all of the veterans in the league that are going to be moving around, because you have Hunt, who's a restricted free agent. You have Le'Veon Bell, who sounds like he could be out there. Where they're probably going to be looking to trade him. I mean, they tried to right before the trade deadline, and then just Adam Gase is the worst coach ever, and they don't seem to be getting along. You have David Johnson and what's going on with that situation where he's likely going to get moved. So, I mean, there's a lot of veteran running backs as well that Melvin Gordon, that he's going to be a free agent. So I think there's going to be, there's going to be a lot of movement here to kind of watch before the NFL draft, and kind of where some of these spots are going to get taken. I think some other ones are going to get opened up. Like the Jets could be a spot where they're definitely looking for a running back if they decide to move on from Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, and then we get caught in this rookie mode and forget that there's other guys still going to be fighting for their jobs. So, yeah, there's still a lot to look at with that as well. But I mean, there's just not, and there's only a finite number of jobs. I mean, like even all the stuff that we just talked about. I mean, we talked about Kansas City. We didn't really mention it in passing, like Tampa Bay, Miami, Houston, Atlanta, San Francisco, Denver, and Tennessee. If all 8 of those spots are actually legitimately wide open, like what does that mean for this class? I mean, there's not going to be more than 8 jobs available, and realistically, it's probably more like 5, maybe 6 at most, and it's probably less. And even the Tampa Bay situation, that's not even like, I know people like that the situation, and just in theory, all you got to do is pass Rojo and Peyton Barber, but like that's not even a given. Given what they've done with backs that they've drafted, they're not even really given the reins until they earn it. They get the yips in practice, that they get benched for an entire season. So, yeah, a lot still up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year. I think that kind of monitoring everything and seeing how things shake out, because it's easy to kind of look at things and get excited right now because we're so early in the process. But, I think the biggest indicator of everything and of what you should think of anybody is going to be the draft. And I think one thing that tends to happen is because we spend so much time breaking these players down, looking into them, watching their film, looking at their advanced metrics and everything else, where we kind of can get ourselves into a little bit of trouble with some take lock, and we don't kind of reevaluate once the draft happens. And we just will stick with our whatever we think, despite the fact that maybe somebody's in a bad spot. And we think that, oh, well, I love DeAndre Swift, but he maybe went to a bad spot, or maybe he's in a committee kind of like Miles Sanders was this year. And instead of kind of recalibrating what you think, you just kind of stick with it. Or there was a later round guy that you loved, similar to like what happened with Jeremy McNichols 3 or 4 years ago, where the whole Dynasty Twitter loved some Jeremy McNichols and everybody was all about him. And he ended up going undrafted. So I think some of that too goes a long way as well, where trying not to get caught up in some recency or take lock.
Yeah. Hey, McNichols was on the Titans in preseason this year, so still got a chance, right? No, not really. But great example there. I think he was like, he might have been like a 5th rounder, maybe, or something. I don't know. No, definitely wasn't what everyone thought he was going to be pre-draft. So yeah, take lock is a dangerous thing, but this time of year, there's so much more information that we still have to kind of gather with the combine and with the draft, because the draft capital smooths that smooths everything out. That teaches us all we really need to know about what the NFL has to think about them. But I think right now, establishing a base, like we were talking about before we went live, I mean, it's just establishing that base value for where these players probably should be, given what we know right now. Helps us control our overreactions when it gets to the combine in a few weeks. And it causes us to, not reset our entire board when we get like 2 or 3 more tiny pieces of information, when it gets to the NFL combine. But I'm still looking forward to it. I want to learn more, but yeah, there's some clear top options in this class. And then there's a gap.
So for people who may not grind this much, or maybe people that are new to Dynasty or whatever, whenever they're watching the combine, I know it's easy to get caught up in their 40 times, and that kind of is always the sexy thing that everybody looks forward to. But what are some other parts of the combine that people should really be paying attention to in regards to the running back position that matter far more than just 40 times?
I mean, it's the whole package. I think people just look at the 40 time, and in our DCC and RotoViz rookie guy this year, we did some intense breakdowns of kind of positional looks and things. And Blair Andrews did some work in looking into draft round and the 40 time, and kind of how the 40 is actually, that really does, if you look at actual production in the NFL for players that are drafted and run a 4.5 40 or faster, like how they produce versus slower running backs. Really, it's kind of a wash in the early rounds. Like, speed doesn't almost mean anything. Like, yeah, you need to be like a faster than a 4.7, but like once you get into the later rounds, you look at 4th round, 5th round guys that are reached for because they had a 4.4 something 40. Those guys don't pan out at the same rate as the Kareem Hunts do. And even the Jeremy Hills do. And like round 3, those slower guys that are just actually better at the position, they might not have wowed in the 40-yard dash, but they can actually read an offensive line and hit the gaps more efficiently than those just speedsters. So I think the 40 really, outside of just being a threshold exercise, making sure the guy runs faster than 4.68 or something really bad, which I think that's exactly what Jeremy Hill ran, by the way. I know you used to love him back in the day, but he was good for a while. But besides just being a threshold exercise, I mean, you got to look at the broad jump and the vertical jump just to kind of weigh in like a burst score and kind of understand how sudden a player can be. It's more than just that straight line speed. And really, I do look at the cones. I don't get sucked up into that like with the Dalvin Cooks. Like, if it shows up on film, but it doesn't show up just on 1 or 2 reps on draft on the combine day, I don't completely throw out everything I know about a player. I think I just take it in stride, one test at a time, and kind of piece the jumps together, piece the agility scores together, and watch for a threshold at the 40. Anything 4.5 or faster is just incredible. And people I think want to see like 4.4 something, but they kind of forget that the average running back at the NFL Combine, I mean, they hit around 4.57. So I think just going in with proper expectations and an understanding of what even is 50th percentile at each test can really help you prepare and kind of sift through the noise in a way that not many people are.
Yeah, Travis, I don't know how much this information has changed, but I remember you did a podcast last year for the Dynasty Command Center that was just going over, just like you were talking about, thresholds and averages. And for the people that are listening now, it was episode 8 of the Dynasty Command Center. It was going over that stuff.
Man, I don't even know this. You got this in front of you?
Like I said, there was just one that stuck with me, and I have it saved in my podcast. Nice. I was like, man, I know I have that somewhere. So yeah, it was episode 8. For those that want to jump in,
I'll have to go back and listen just to make sure I'm not quoting the wrong averages.
Yeah, I don't know how much I would have, like thresholds and averages would have changed, but that was something that I listened to and kind of kept track of and tried to, keep those numbers in mind when I was watching it, except for Devin Singletary. He don't care.
No, he doesn't care. He's like, hey, I'm like 5'7" and don't hit any threshold that you want me to, and I'm still going to be successful. It's fine. But he was, his production metrics were stupid, though. He was like, hey, I'm going to score 60 touchdowns in 2 years. It's fine. It's normal.
Yeah, but, he's one of those ones where if you were just basing it off the combine, that does not look good. But if you just put on, if you hashtag watch the tape, he was someone who those numbers just didn't match up. You know what I mean? Like he didn't play like a, what was he, 4.66 and like a 7-something 3 cone.
Yeah, it was bad. Actually, I pulled up the digital race I just now that I used for that episode. And the only thing where he was even remotely close to average was his vertical jump. I think he was like right around the 50th percentile for vertical jump. Everything else, like he was bottom quartile easy for the most part. So, yeah. So you can, and you don't have to scrape sportsreference.com with all the combine data dating back to the year 2000 like I did. But, there's information that's out there to be had. So just kind of arming yourself with the right information can definitely help out and help you kind of properly gauge expectations and limit overreactions.
So, all right. So looking at some of the other guys, we've kind of hit on some of these guys already. Now, tell me if I'm crazy here, because when I was watching Cam Akers, something about him, maybe I'm way off on this in terms of like a player comp, but he sort of reminded me of Aaron Jones. Is that way off on what he could be?
No, I think, and he's even bigger, really. I think he's going to weigh in bigger than Aaron Jones did. But I think he could definitely fit in that type of role. And I think looking back to Aaron Jones and his college experience, it's not the exact same. But I don't know if you're familiar with UTEP and how awful of a program that is. Aaron Jones had literally nothing else around him that even would promote any reason for him to have success while he was in college and at UTEP. They're a team that, for a while they were barely even winning a couple games a year. But he had like a 1,600-yard season or something crazy. Can't remember what it was, which year. He kind of got hurt some in college, but it wasn't the perfect production profile you want to see. And Cam Akers definitely doesn't have the perfect production profile. His efficiency actually got worse as he went along, but it was obviously due to the offensive line and kind of pieces around him too. I could see that being some kind of similar profile. Aaron Jones just didn't get the Florida State bump, and he didn't have the 5-star pedigree that Akers did coming into college, but I think Akers could settle into that mid-round pick and be that 3rd-round selection. I know Aaron Jones is like a 4th or 5th round, I think 5th round. But yeah, I like that as a comp just from ferocity of play style and an ability to kind of hit the gap the way they do.
Yeah, when I was sitting there watching him, it just kind of struck me a little bit. I was like, I don't know, something about this reminded me of Aaron Jones, and I'm a Aaron Jones truther. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
As you should be, as everyone should be.
I know. I mean, I
like 2 years ago.
Yeah. So let's get past these top five. I think, we've kind of, I think it's all, I think pretty much everybody who, is doing anything Dynasty knows who these guys are. Let's get into some of the little bit more of the unknowns a little bit. You have guys like Zach Moss, Keyshawn Vaughn. There's another guy, though, as I was kind of going through and kind of digging into stuff, A.J. Dillon from Boston College. He seems to be somebody that is rising up for people right now. And he's kind of looking at some of his numbers, what he's 6'1", 240, 250 in that range. I think when I was going back and looking at his what he did when coming out of college, I think he ran like a 4.5 and had a 38 inch broad, or what is it? I wrote that wrong down. But anyways,
38-inch broad jump would not be very good.
Yeah. I don't think I actually wrote it down what it was.
No, it was he had like an almost 40-inch vert, and he ran like a 4.5 40 coming out of high school at a ridiculous size. He was almost 240 at age 17, which is just kind of bizarre and a little bit weird. He was a little bowling ball at first, but he grew into his body, that's for sure, at Boston College. But really a strange production profile. In Devy circles, he was one of those guys that popped early. A lot of people were taking him early in Devy drafts, and even in college football leagues, people were just eating it up. But how do you have 300 rush attempts and 0 receptions? Like that was what he did his first year of college. He had 300 carries and 0 catches. It's just he's not going to really. I mean, in all of college, I think he caught 21, 22 balls, and so he's going to be like that Brandon Jacobs, that Derrick Henry type mold, where, really just Derrick Henry. Like he's that huge guy. He's not as tall, but he's a straight line monster that can just annihilate any defensive back for the most part, and annihilate. He's as big as a modern NFL linebacker. I mean, even like really 6'1", 240, you're looking at a modern day middle linebacker. So I definitely like him as a runner. I see him as a player like if like your boy Jeremy Hill, like if he was actually athletic in any way, like that's who AJ Dillon would be.
Oh man! Hey, you know what? He is a Super Bowl champion. All right, so
I saw that one coming a mile away.
Oh, you walked right into it, Jeremy. Both Super Bowl champs. So
yeah. So is LeGarrette Blount, and yeah,
that is true. I actually, is LeGarrette Blount actually a decent comp for AJ Dillon? Because I have seen people using LeGarrette Blount as a comp for him.
Yeah, if LeGarrette Blount was athletic too, yeah.
All right, then. Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is you think AJ Dillon's just going to be a between the tackles grinder?
I think so. I think he could even have that late round tag to him too. I think when you look at where he's going in most mocks, he's a day 3 guy, and so in that regard, he's got the crazy speed, almost like, I guess, maybe like a Latavius Murray in that regard, because like Murray's got the feature back size, and he had big straight line speed, but he basically had nothing else going for him for a long while. So maybe he kind of figures it out, a la Latavius Murray at some point, and gets some kind of opportunity and earns himself a second contract somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'm not as big a fan of the between the tackles grinder these days.
No.
Because it's PPR live. So.
Yep, exactly. And that's why AJ Dillon's like, he's probably a 3rd round rookie pick for a lot of people, even though he has, I guess, kind of been rising back somewhat. Yeah, he's probably a 3rd round rookie pick in most dynasty drafts. But it's still, I mean, just the monster that he is just, he's a lot of fun to watch run, just like Derrick Henry is, just because he just levels people.
Another guy that kind of is a little, I mean, he's definitely was used far more as a pass catcher, but P. Ryan from Florida. I I kind of watching him. I kind of felt like, he doesn't really look like a guy that's a typical burner, but I think he does have enough burst and short area quickness to kind of get himself into space. And he had 78 missed tackles in college. He's somebody also that was never really given a huge workload, never really had like a monster year. I think the most rushing yards he had in a year was 800. I know he ended up with 493 attempts and 2,400 yards, but he did have 40 receptions this past year. This was his first year. He kind of they really tried to use him as a pass catcher. Before this, I think he only had 32 the other 3 years. So is he what is your thoughts on him, and where do you see him going?
Yeah, some people have him kind of round 4-ish, round 5-ish, and that feels probably about right. I think he's probably that back that he had the recruiting pedigree. He's big enough. He's fast enough. But he's going to really profile, I think, when it's all said and done, as like a just above average athlete that really kind of probably slides in as a career backup. He might even get like a second contract as a backup somewhere because he's going to look good in practice and catch passes well enough to kind of stick somewhere. But it's not somebody that I'm really spending even, third round rookie capital on. It's like somebody that I might target late in rookie drafts, but I don't think he's going to have the capital or any extreme portion of his profile that makes me think, oh, that guy's going to be a starter and he's going to be a contributor and he's going to be a top 24 running back for a long time for fantasy football leagues. And yeah, he did catch 40 balls, but he was super inefficient with those balls. I think he had like I want to say it was 6 or 7 yards per reception or something on those 40 catches. So it's not like he was blowing us away and scoring a bunch of receiving touchdowns. There was a bunch of checkdowns for the most part, just getting a bunch of panic stuff while Kyle Trask just kind of had to figure out the offense. And Kyle Trask looked better as the year went on, but P. Ryan was that Mr. Checkdown back that just didn't do much with the opportunity. I would have loved for him to do more with those receptions.
He's somebody who
he had 5 receiving touchdowns this year is what he ended up with.
Yeah, to me his tape was inconsistent. He showed like flashes of like, oh, okay, he can do that well. And then the next game it was, well, that looked awful. It's like he was just like, there was never one game where I watched it seemed like super complete. So if you're looking to draft him, he's more of like I hope he lands in a shallow depth chart kind of guy. You know what I mean? Maybe he can pop here or there.
Yeah. I'm just he was basically just splitting time like his whole career. Even with guys like Jordan Scarlett, who's undrafted free agent type. And before that, he was, splitting carries with Malik Davis that got benched this year. And like Mark Thompson, like nobodies that just aren't really going to do anything ever in the NFL. So I'm not sure that he's ever going to push his way up through an NFL depth chart. And that's my only concern with P. Ryan.
So you think maybe more the likely ceiling is probably like a Spencer Ware type?
Yeah, like
some opportunities, but he's not ever going to be anybody that's going to have like a real big impact on a team.
Yeah, like if he was a handcuff to somebody and they went down, he could have a productive streak for 6 to 8 weeks, and then people would think about trading him for a rookie second round pick, and then he would disappear the next season. But that's probably my ceiling of expectations for a Michael P. Ryan.
Do you know what his 40-yard dash was from the opening, Travis?
It was probably like 4.65 or something.
4.87.
Ooh, man, that's really bad. Like that's
a 27-inch vert as well.
Yeah. So, he was one of those guys who actually, and probably until he went to one of those testing kind of camps, was actually recruited pretty highly. I think he almost went to Alabama. I think he was same class as Josh Jacobs, actually. They almost both went to Alabama, but he ended up going elsewhere. So that would have been interesting to see what happened if he would have probably just gotten buried and never done anything at Alabama. But man, he probably shouldn't have done any of those camps. It sounds like he might just be one of those guys that abstains from the 40 this year, unless he can be faster than Elijah Holyfield.
He's going to have that hamstring pull after medical checks.
Yeah. Be wise to do so, I guess.
So, what are your thoughts on guys like Zach Moss and Keyshawn Vaughn? Are they? Do you think that they could find themselves anyway in creeping into like a top 5 for people, depending on how well they test?
Yeah, I think they already are for some, especially like the people that ascribe to and follow Pro Football Focus and what they've done, because Zach Moss is breaking more tackles than anybody in college football, and really from whatever film grades you want to give him. I mean, it's really hard to put him outside the top 5 or 6, just from if you're a film grinder, if you love the broken tackles and what he does inside the tackles, and he actually can catch. He was productive for a full 3 years. So I mean, when you look at his profile, there's not a whole lot of holes going on there. But I think for me, he's not going to test well athletically. And you were talking about high school athletic testing. I think his 40 was around like a 4.7 ish or something like that. So he's probably going to be one of those guys that abstains from probably the agility tests and the 40. He'll probably do the jumps because he has the strength. And so he'll probably do the broad, and he'll probably do the vert, and he'll probably test like the 60th percentile there just to be like check for a couple people. But he's going to have to sneak into day 3 probably for me to be super interested. But I think some people are catching on, realizing, oh, wow, this guy was really productive. He just played in the Pac-12, and I never saw him play because I was like asleep by the time the game started. But that's just kind of how the Pac-12 backs generally go. But Zach Moss is somebody I definitely like. Keyshawn Vaughn, I think he's really old. He's actually, I think, just about the same age as Kerryon Johnson. Had kind of a weird career path. He's actually from, I think, the Tennessee area. Went to high school here locally. Went off to Illinois. Kind of broke out a little bit as a freshman, but then kind of took a weird path and had to take a year off, and then played at Vandy for a while. It just some bad programs really kind of wasted what seems to be a really impressive talent. And he was the only guy doing anything against the toughest SEC teams for all of his time here at Vandy on the offense. So I think he does a lot of things well, and I think he's going to earn probably round 4 draft capital. But if he pulls a Singletary and sneaks into round 3, he's somebody that's going to fly up draft boards for a lot of people.
Yeah, Vaughn, I have currently right outside that top 5 that we talked about earlier. I really like his game all around. Like, there's nothing that I don't think that he does great, but he does everything well enough. And then if you just kind of want to get an idea of how bad that offense was this year, I think Vaughn had less than 300 yards receiving, and he was the 3rd highest receiving total on that team. And I think Lipscomb had like less than like 600 receiving yards or something.
It was bad. I mean, they averaged like 170 passing yards per game in college. Like Vandy was averaging 170 passing yards per game. Like, that's just brutal. It's like they just couldn't even do anything on offense. They were cycling through basically 4 different quarterbacks, and it was just a joke of an offense. So I mean, I went to the LSU Vandy game this year, and it was just hilarious just trying to see this Vandy offense do anything. And it was almost like LSU was just like, whatever, just score points. We want to kind of pad our stats, do your thing. It's fine. But in all reality, they were actually playing tough to start the game. And still in that game against LSU, the national championship team LSU, he put up 130 rushing yards and 2 scores. And that's not just junk time stuff. Like, Keyshawn Vaughn was the only thing going for that offense. And so he can do it against the toughest competition. I think he's already proven that. He just really probably needs a strong combine to kind of separate himself and insert himself into the conversation for that top 5, top 6, top 7, kind of lock it in there.
Oh, I remember. He's the reason that you guys beat Mizzou.
Absolutely. I was there at that game too.
How are we losing to this team? And I think that really was like our downfall. That was you guys got Barry Odom fired. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And
you're welcome.
Part of that. But yeah, Keyshawn Vaughn was the was the only guy doing anything in that game because he ended up with like 30 carries, 96 yards. And he also had, I think he had like 70 or 80 receiving yards, scored a couple touchdowns. So
he had like 170, 180 total yards that game. And it's funny. I took so the reason why I go to Vandy games is I live in the Nashville area and my wife works at Vandy. And so we get season tickets for dirt cheap. One, because it's Vandy, and two, because my wife works there. So we got like sweet seats right on the 50. I bring my grandpa into town. He's never been to a Mizzou game. He's been a Mizzou fan his whole life. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. They're going to come in and they're just going to mop the floor with Vandy, and he's going to get to see this great victory. And then they lose to Vanderbilt. I was like, just so sad for my grandpa. It was fun to hang out, but man, that was a rough game.
That is the life of a Missouri fan. We are well, I didn't matter sport. Basketball, same thing, just broken hearts all over the place,
Hey, you got Sean Robinson this year. He could do something.
Yeah.
Probably won't, though, just because it's Mizzou.
I am interested to see how the new coach does. He's kind of an unknown a little bit. So I'm kind of interested to see how that works out, but I don't have a lot of faith. I mean, I wasn't a big Barry Odom guy. So I was not sad to see him go. It's going to be interesting. I think he went to Arkansas. I think he's going to be their defensive coordinator, I believe. So we will be seeing him again. But
Well, that's probably enough on the rambling about the great state of Kansas, as our president would call it. But
that is true. That is now with all kinds of stuff. I've seen like make
shirts.
Yeah, shirts, and then make Missouri or make Missouri
Kansas
again or something like that. I can't remember what it said.
Make Missouri Kansas again? Is that?
Yeah, something like that. I can't remember what it was.
Man.
Yeah, that was great. So, but anyways, so what are we at? Almost, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna try to do our best here to get through this because we don't want to go over an hour. So, I think we kind of hit on most of these guys. Is there anybody else kind of in this range of guys that we haven't really hit on that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so Benjamin's definitely firmly in the conversation just because he's been one of the most productive backs for a couple years now. He obviously had the explosion in his second year of action, again, like a 1,600-yard season, but efficiency kind of didn't show up this year with some offensive changes that, different weapons going on for him. Didn't see the same success, and then he weighed in like super scrawny at the Senior Bowl, and he's trying to get faster for his 40, and he's also just not a super athletic guy. So things are going to have to look a little bit different at the combine. We're going to have to see a little bit better buzz and see that weight gain back at some point, probably for him, if he's going to be in the day 2 conversation, because I think he's working his way out of it. But if you're looking for like absolute crazy, just out of nowhere sleepers to kind of climb up into this conversation, I don't think Darius Anderson's going to be drafted very high, but he's going to kill the combine. I think he's going to be like a 90th percentile at everything from TCU. DJ Dallas is kind of another one of those guys that does a lot of things well, but does nothing perfectly. But he's got enough size to kind of be a hoss in between the tackles and the speed to win once he gets to the edge. Anthony McFarland is way too small, but there are some people that really like him. From Maryland, he was kind of a hot Debbie name there for a little bit. So keep an eye on him. I'd be interested to see what he does at the combine, because he could be really, really fast. He could be that guy that runs a 4.4 flat like Justice Hill last year and, slides all the way up to round 4. But then the pair of Memphis backs are really intriguing because they've got some crazy size. Antonio Gibson and Patrick Taylor Jr. Antonio Gibson, he could have been a wide receiver or a running back really in this class. Not super productive for a long time, but he's like 6'6'1", 225, like super thick feature back size, and he's going to be fast. He's going to be real fast. He's going to be like 4 or 5 flat at feature back size. And then Patrick Taylor, who was just absolutely robbed of his final season due to injury, was supposed to be this 25 touchdown, 2,000 yard back this year, but missed most of the year. He's really, really talented. He kind of got overshadowed by Darrell Henderson when they were both at Memphis, but he was already a 20 touchdown guy, 1,100 yard, 1,200 yard guy with Darrell Henderson on his team. So that tandem of Memphis backs, either one could be drafted and could wow at the combine and sneak up into round 4 or 5 conversation. So lots of names there to kind of sift through, but there's just a lot of interesting guys that could see their stocks soar here soon.
Another name I'll throw in the mix there, Savon Ahmed out of Washington. He's going to be another guy. I think he was timed twice in the 40 at a 4.32 on 2 separate occasions. I think when he was going into college and then last year at the Husky Combine. So he's another guy who could jump up, or if he lands in a place like San Fran once that depth chart kind of shakes out over the next couple of months, he could be someone who would be fun in San Francisco with Shanny.
Yeah. And he's just like, if he was in any other class, I think he would be higher for sure. But I wonder if he kind of gets – Myles Gaskin should have been by anybody's projection. Myles Gaskin should have tested athletically, and Myles Gaskin, former Washington Husky, he should have been drafted higher. He had like a bunch of seasons that he was productive, but I wonder if Ahmed's going to be as fast as advertised. He needs to prove it for a lot of reasons, but he's kind of like on the fringe right now. I think for a lot of people, if he tests well, he's instantly inserted into that round 3 rookie draft conversation probably. But right now he's on the outside looking in, even being drafted probably in rookie drafts as of today. Don't you think, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, he had the chance to really take over this year with Gaskin heading to the NFL, and I think he left a lot of guys disappointed. But whenever you're looking at those kind of late round dart throws, you're kind of looking for speed or a boatload of catches, or something like that. So that was just something I noticed whenever I was looking over Ahmed's stuff. It was at the opening, and then at the Husky Combine, he apparently clocked in at a 4.32 on both occasions.
Yeah. So hopefully he wows, and I'd love to see his stock soar, because he actually did have an okay season this year, but it just was overshadowed by Washington's kind of mediocrity, I guess. Just overall, they were like 8-5. They weren't the whole playoff contenders that they were a couple years ago. So people kind of forgot about him. And again, he's a Pac-12 back, and nobody watches those games because they start at like 11. But yeah, lots of backs to be excited about this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think this year's class is going to be pretty interesting. It's a shame that some of the guys decide to go back to school and kind of water it down a little, but it'll be interesting. Do you think so? Every year there's kind of that just a position that I think everyone's most excited about. What position do you think that is this year? You think it's the wide receiver position, or do you think it's more of the running backs?
I think it's for like real draft people. I think it's wide receivers. It's turned into wide receivers just because looking at the top of the class, there's a lot of fun names. But then, really, when you stretch it out, and even when you hear little blurbs from people like Todd McShay and other big names, they're kind of like, man, I could cram 20 wide receivers into day 2, like day 1 and 2, and it's so there's a lot of depth there. A lot of guys that check a lot of boxes from a production standpoint, and answer a lot of questions that the kind of film-based analysis people want to see too. So, when I'm looking at it, I'm working on a top 100 rookies piece that includes IDP right now, and there's like 32 wide receivers that I could legit be excited about depending on what happens on draft day. So there's a lot to kind of sift through there. It's kind of an ocean of information at wide receiver, whereas I really am pumped about 3 backs, and there's like 3 or 4 others that are maybes, and then one other guy will probably insert his name into that hat, into that hat as well. But there's 20 guys probably at wide receiver that are intriguing even after draft day.
Which is a bit of a breath of fresh air, because the last few years haven't been as enticing in terms of at least the pre-draft and the draft. Now, this year was actually, I think one of the better years we've seen for rookie wide receivers. Deebo Samuel, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin. and some of the other guys that really McCole Hardman. I think this year's class could end up being a lot of fun, in years to come. So
yeah,
it'll be interesting to see everything else gets out.
Travis, are you team Judy or team Lamb? I don't know if I've heard you talk about this yet.
I'm team Lamb in that regard. Just because, well, there's a few different reasons, but yeah, I'm team Lamb. He basically how he kind of fixed his production profile with no Hollywood there, and just his peak and final season numbers and what he's probably going to do at the combine and where he's going to get the draft capital, just like Judy. But he really does run routes well. I think people call Judy like the best route runner ever, just because he can like break his knees and like do a backflip and then just run a curl and then turn it into. He's just a freaking magician when it comes to routes. Like I get it. I get the intrigue with Judy, but I think I'm thinking like his BMI is possibly going to be an issue for where he actually probably drops down. He's probably not even a top 10, not top 15 wide receiver selection, but more like, what happened with Calvin Ridley dropping down and getting passed by Lamb. Lamb is probably going to be this year's DJ Moore to Calvin Ridley situation, and Lamb's probably going to end up with more capital on draft day than even Judy. But they're very close in the same realm for sure.
All right. Well, I think we've kind of hit on everybody. We'll obviously be doing this again post combine, post pre-draft. Once we have far more information and kind of more things to go off of. But we thought this would be a fun exercise.
Yeah.
Excuse me. To kind of go over, kind of get the ball rolling, kind of start looking at some of these guys if you've been, worrying about other things and kind of starting to get this process going, because this is a exciting time of the year of looking into draft prospects and everything else, pre-combine. And then, everything goes crazy after that. So, Travis, I really appreciate you having you on. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find all your stuff, maybe a little bit about the draft guide, stuff like that.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at @FF_Travis M. You can find most of my writing work at RotoViz. I do some Titan stuff closer to the season as well with Music City Miracles from time to time. And that's been a blast. And then, of course, the Dynasty Command Center podcast. Check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find it on the RotoViz radio feed amid a bunch of other great shows. But we've got a rookie guide that just released. There'll be 3 additions to that. We got the pre-combine that just came out, and we'll have a post-combine that drops most likely the Wednesday right after the combine with a bunch of new content. And then post-draft will be the final issue. Lots of work goes into that. We got some of the best graphics guys in this industry just working on that, making it look good. And so just appreciate the whole team that puts that together. But it's been a blast kind of working on that with the guys. But yeah, so you can find that on rotoviz.com as well. There's actually a whole dedicated page to the 2020 rookie guide, tons of fun information and metrics and just new ways to look at prospect analysis that I'm sure you guys would appreciate. But appreciate you letting me plug my stuff and letting me come on and join. And just great to talk with you guys again. It's been a bit, but just glad to be here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you coming on. You are TFA OG for sure. Been around. I think a lot of people still miss the old Dynasty Live podcast, you and Justin and Andrew Frechette. That was one of the, I'm not a big Dynasty guy. We've talked about this on other podcasts. I'm more of a redraft DFS guy, but I respect the hustle of the grind of the Dynasty people. I thought it would be fun to do some podcasts sometime about Dynasty where me as a non-Dynasty guy, you guys can tell me why Dynasty is good and try to sell it to me, because I don't I think it's a little bit too far with some of the things or whatever, but like people are just always obsessed with trading and never wanting to, feels like people don't want to win sometimes. But
they want their roster to look good though. They want the trade bull, like the trade polls on Twitter to just be 80% to 20% in their favor. And so they're just always making deals. But no, it's a different life. I understand that the Dynasty life isn't for isn't for everybody. And you know what? I'm getting there with the DFS stuff, man. This year with NFL, and I was writing a column for college football DFS every single week this year, and that was a blast. Like putting together, like 1,000 different players into my model and just cranking it out. It was a lot of fun. So I'm leaning in your direction a little bit more, Kevin.
Yes. You know what? I'm ashamed of myself though, is because I'm so with NFL DFS, I'm so narrow-minded whenever the NFL season's going on, because they actually opened up college sports and DFS in Missouri. So I actually could have. I didn't play at all.
Well,
because I have you're so much of a grind for the NFL and getting prepared for that for Sunday. But I really want to get into it more. I am actually playing NASCAR this weekend. NASCAR season is back.
Because it's freaking Daytona. Real soon, right? It's coming up in.
And the Clash is this weekend, and which is like a little primer to the Daytona 500. And the next weekend is the 500. Yeah. But I'm telling you, the Daytona 500 is kind of, it's not easy money, but the strategy with
everybody plays too, probably that week.
Yeah, there's so many fish. People don't know what they're doing, and people just want to jump on and play. But with the Daytona 500, just easy tip is just play everybody from the back, because there's so many wrecks in the 500. That you just play a guy that you would never think about playing.
All right. Well, hey, look, give me a pool and I'll play.
Yeah.
All right. Just give me a pool. I'll help you out with the college football season. I promise.
Yeah.
We'll make it happen.
So, yeah. But anyways, again, I really appreciate having you on. And it's always a lot of fun catching up with you and following everything you're doing. You've been crushing it since day one. And so we appreciate you having on. Maybe I have to get you on again sometime. Maybe the next time we'll talk about tight ends, because you seem to love the tight end position more than most.
Yeah, I love tight ends. Just all tight ends. But no, there are probably 11 guys I could get excited about that position right now. So
Alberto. It's the only thing.
Koi Bunum. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah,
no.
I mean that. I don't even know if Kel Garrett is going to get drafted. I know before, because he got hurt, but he was I think it was a preseason All-American or All-SEC, something like that. I think so. Anyway, regardless, I can talk about Missouri all the time.
Let's not though. Let's not do it.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're terrible. They're terrible.
That's true.
So, anyways,
and this is how we end up with 2-hour podcasts.
I'm trying to hurry.
We've only been just talking nonsense for 7 minutes. Leave us be, Cody. Come on, give us our 7 minutes. It's fine.
I know people enjoy the Missouri talk. That's what they needed. So
yeah, there's 3 of them. Yeah.
So, yeah. Hey, gotta hold it down. Gotta hold the fort down. So it's tough times here. So we're a brotherhood, and we just we all start a support group for each other. So, anyways, all right. So let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll be back, I believe, next week. We're going to have Elliot Christ on to talk about the wide receivers. And then I don't know. We'll keep this going. Then we'll talk about quarterbacks, tight ends, and then we'll roll into some free agency talk, because free agency should be starting by then. And so, yeah, this is all going to go pretty quick, but we got a lot of fun stuff planned, and you can check out the YouTube channel. We'll be breaking all this stuff down to a much shorter and easier to digest version as well over on the YouTube. So hit us up over there, subscribe, and we really appreciate it. And until next week, we will talk to you then. Peace.